Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
Why don't you wait until July 1st to make an announcement? What a disgrace. He can rack up all these numbers in October, November, and December, but what really counts is let me see this in January.
The sports rebel without a pause, delivering fast-paced, jam-packed sports talk like no other.
Listen, I gotta call it as I see it. He is not a good player. I'm sick and tired of having to deal with the disappointment of this franchise. When does it stop? And yes, another winter that I can sleep in peace. Coming correct, directed, in full effect. Let's get it.
This is the JAYREELZ podcast. Welcome aboard.
What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic and excellent spirits. Here to deliver another podcast. We thought that the sports world was going to quiet down. Absolutely not, because there's a lot to decipher, a lot to digest. And here to present it to you all on the latest edition is none other than yours truly, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with Joe's JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle, even as early as this past Monday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And for those who are watching live, as you see there on the ticker below, I just want you to know that whatever comments you want to post, please feel free to do so. I won't get to them until after I go through my stream of consciousness with all the sports. So you figure over the course of the next hour, I'm not going to pay attention like I usually do on my Wednesday live streams when I'm going back and forth, but I will get to them after I go through my agenda, and then we'll go back and forth on whatever questions, comments you want to debate, agree, disagree, the whole nine. So I just want to put that out there for starters for those who are just tuning in. But as we look at the landscape in sports, like I mentioned a second ago, just when we thought things were quiet, knowing that we haven't had the NHL, although we have the hockey with the Olympics, which I'll get to. Baseball pitchers and catchers, as well as the position players, have reported. And to think, you're actually going to have exhibition games in baseball starting as early as Saturday. I will touch on that on a bigger scale when it comes to the Players Union and what's gone on there over the last 48 hours. The NBA, which will resume tonight, and that's where I'm going to begin because there are some NFL news and obviously college basketball, which I'm going to discuss. But right now, the NBA is going to be front and center because you have an excellent schedule starting tonight, heading into the weekend, which I'll unravel, or I should say uncover, later on. But from what we could gather here, 2/3 of the way into the season, and if you listen to the podcast on Monday, I did a little recap of the first 2/3. Please feel free to go back, check it out right here on the YouTube channel, as well as Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can certainly listen to it then. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. I sincerely appreciate it. As an independent creator of sports talk and the like, this will go a long way to increase the visibility of this channel with all the others that are out there. So I would appreciate your support from the bottom of my heart. Share it with your family, friends, foes, frenemies, etc. For those who like sports, love sports, gotta have it, can't get enough of it, this is the channel for you, I promise. But with all that being said, now as we take a look at the next 2 months, because 2 months from yesterday will actually be the beginning of the NBA playoffs. And yes, I understand you have the play-in tournament, which will start the Tuesday before that. But once the dust settles and once we get all 8 participants in each conference qualified, set and ready to go, the playoffs will tip off, like I mentioned, 2 months from yesterday. And to me, that's one of the more exciting weekends because you have 4 basketball games on Saturday, 4 on Sunday, and then the following weekend as well, which happens to coincide with the NFL draft, albeit rounds 4 through 7. But as I take a look at this last third of the season, and I know a lot of the teams have played right at 54 games, some less than, a couple more than. But how I look at it here, it's weird because when we look at the landscape, and obviously the West is a lot more intriguing than the East. I don't have to tell you that for those who follow the sport. Although the East now may have some moving parts that could make a playoff, and understand I don't want to talk about playoffs just yet. I mean, we still have plenty of basketball to go here with the regular season, but when you think back to the beginning of the year, and we talked about how loaded the West was, and the East, we thought it was going to be a two-team race for the most part, where the Knicks looked like they were going to be the front runner by far, considering all the injuries that we've seen dating back to last postseason with the Celtics and Pacers. And then the Pistons, who knew that they were going to have this type of year to where they were going to be tops in the Eastern Conference right now, have a nice, comfortable lead that they should cruise to a 1 seed and may have home court, not only just in the East, but maybe throughout the entire NBA postseason, depending on how far they go, of course. But now you have a scenario where James Harden gets traded to Cleveland, and everybody knows how I feel about James Harden, not to unpack that whole career, especially with him in the postseason. But you have to throw in Cleveland. And the other thing is the Celtics. Now, the Celtics are a team that have really played well above their heads, and everybody knows I'm a huge Celtic fan. And I temper it a little bit because despite the fact of their success this year and how well they performed, you have to wonder whether or not, and even after this break, if this team is going to have a run in them. Based on what we've seen, you would think that, hey, they could be maybe not a dark horse, but why not them getting to an NBA final? And I'm going to touch on the 5 teams that I think could win, not just get to, but I think could win the NBA final. I'll talk about that in the back portion of this NBA segment. But the other thing you have to also think about is Jason Tatum, because is Tatum going to get clearance by the medical field or the medical doctors there in Boston? And not only that, he may be physically ready, but what about mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to know that when he gets onto a hardwood, whether in Boston or on the road, where is his psyche going to play tricks with him, knowing that, oh, if I cut this way or if I plant this way, or I don't know how explosive I'm going to be heading to the basket. Is he going to be more of a jump shooter, standing behind the arc, taking threes? I mean, who knows? And that's not an answer that we're going to get until he actually gets to play. But that's going to be a big question here over the remainder of this, 28, 29 game stretch. So I understand the hypothetical, but those are possible questions that could be answered here as we look ahead to this last 2 months of the season. The other teams in the East, I mean, listen, are you going to be geeked up about Toronto, the Sixers? I know Paul George comes back late March with the suspension regarding I don't think it was a performance-enhancing deal. I believe it was a certain medication that he took that was banned by the sport. But how he comes back is going to be interesting to see, because they could be a dark horse team, considering I believe right now they're currently 6th in the Eastern Conference. And if you have a healthy Embiid, which I know that is, talking about question marks, that is the question mark of all question marks, because we don't know if he can let alone last a round, let alone a long playoff run. So, but strange things have happened. You never know. And right now it's constituted, if the season ended today, you'd have Knicks Sixers, which we've seen a million times over. And we also saw the Knicks plaster the 76ers there right before the All-Star break. What was that? I believe it was a week ago yesterday. So the East, and yeah, we could talk about those teams that are 7 through 10, the Orlandos, who to me, they've had a very disappointing year. I thought they'd be a lot better than what they were at this point last year than they are this year. And granted, they were a 7 seed last year when you think about it, and that's where they are right now in the standings. Then you have Miami. Then you have Atlanta. You have Chicago. I know the Bucks are lurking, considering that they're tied with as I pull up the standings here quick. The Bucks are tied in the loss with the Chicago Bulls. So, therefore, they're within striking distance. Well, I should say with the Hawks. And you got Charlotte, too. I always think of the Bulls because they're always part of that mix. But the Bulls are there. When we look at 7 through 10, Orlando, Miami, Charlotte, who have played great, winning 10 of their last 11 games. And tonight they actually have the Rockets coming into town. So they have a pretty interesting matchup coming right out of the gate to start their final third of the season. But the Hawks, who are just a half game behind the Hornets for the 9th seed. Then you have the Bulls, who are a game and a half won in the loss, and actually have a game in hand of the Hawks for that final spot. But now here's where it gets interesting. The Bucks, who are 23-30, 7 under 500, and I'm sure you heard about Giannis interviews over the All-Star weekend saying that he wants to remain loyal, stay with Milwaukee, believes in them, etc. Okay, fine. They are also a game and a half behind the Hawks for the final spot, but they are tied in the loss column and have 3 games in hand. So despite the fact that the Bucks right now on the outside looking in, but they're not far away. Actually, they're as close as you could possibly be from being in the playoffs, or at least in the play-in scenario. And we know the Bucks, if Giannis is healthy, they could be dangerous, at least in that round. Possibly if they get an 8 seed, and even if they could go up as high as 7, maybe they can make some noise against the Celtics or the Knicks or even the Pistons when it's all said and done. Obviously, we still have a ways to go before we get to that point, but you can't discount the Bucks right now. And even though they're a team that I don't think is going to be long for the postseason, and who knows, will they be a team that, dare I even say, will tank? I would hope they wouldn't. I mean, that would be a disservice to not only the fans and the city of Milwaukee, but really to the entire NBA, because I would think you'd want to see Giannis in the postseason, even if they are at 39-43, because that is one of the big stars and superstars of the sport that even if it's a situation where they're in a play-in tournament, at least you may see him for 1 game, maybe 2. And if they do get into the bulk of the tournament, who knows? Maybe just his shoulders alone could carry that team to a 6th, maybe a 7th game, and dare I say, an upset over a 1 or 2 seed. And listen, stranger things have happened. In fact, maybe the stars are aligned for where the Bucks, who, if you remember, got ousted 3 years ago by the Miami Heat, who are an 8th seed in the Eastern Conference by way of the play-in, and they beat them. Now, Giannis, of course, was hurt for 2.5 games, did not play. But who knows? Maybe it's in the cards where Milwaukee will get in as a 7 or 8 seed, and next thing you know, they're in the conference semis. It's a long shot, but we've seen it happen before. So that's what I have there with the East. And then the West, as we all know, is stacked. The West with OKC, the defending champ. But they do have both San Antonio and Denver that they have to worry about. More so San Antonio because they are currently 2 back in the loss, 3 back in the standings. And if you're going to look at tiebreakers, the Spurs have beaten the Thunder 4 out of 5 this year. So if they end up with the best record, or they end up tied, I should say, at the top of the Western Conference, the Spurs are going to get the tiebreaker. And who knows what that means overall, because the Pistons, they're also part of the mix as far as best record overall. And I believe right now the Pistons and Thunder have the same amount of losses and actually have 2 games in hand. Let me just double check that. No, in fact, the Pistons are 40-13. The Thunder are 42-14. So they actually have 3 games in hand, 1 less loss. Their winning percentage is better. So arguably right now they have the best record in the sport. But it could come down to those 3 teams as of right now. And of course, they didn't think it happened. But one of those 3 teams can get the best record, which would mean that if they do, they'll have home court throughout, whether it be San Antonio in the West or overall, or the Pistons overall, considering that I don't think the Celtics or Knicks will catch them. And I know the Pistons and Knicks play tonight, and I'll talk about the schedule in a little bit. But the Thunder and Spurs could be a mano as to see who's going to get that 1 seed. And right now, although, if I do my math correct, the Spurs have 2 games in hand on Oklahoma City and 2 back in the loss, 3 games behind overall. And then you have the Nuggets with Nikola Jokic back. He's been back for a couple of weeks after hurting his knee there in Miami in late December. And the Nuggets, as you know, they're deeper than they've been, even dating back to that championship team back, 3 years ago. And you know they're going to be heard from, and they're going to be a dangerous out. As far as the Rockets, they've been streaky. You look at them now, they're 4th. And watch in about 3 weeks' time, they may be tied for 2nd. But then 3 weeks after that, they'll be back in 4th place. So they're a little bit too streaky for my liking. But the Rockets, I'm sure they're going to be a team that a lot of people do not want to play. Obviously, with Kevin Durant there and the head coach, Ime Udoka, who knows his way around finals. The one year that he was in Boston, got to a final, lost to Golden State, as you know. And then you have teams that could be laying in the weeds, whether that is the Lakers, the Suns, the Warriors. I'm not going to say so much. Steph Curry hurt. Right now, I don't think he's playing in the game tonight against the Celtics. Speaking of which, the aforementioned matchup there in the 2022 finals. Although they're going to get Kristaps Porzingis to play for the first time in a Warrior uniform, which happens to be against his former teammates. But for the Warriors, I'm not a believer in them. I know that right now they're in the play-in scenario at the 8th seed, which I'm sure they don't want to be a part of. Because right now, they're 4 games behind the T-Wolves. And the T-Wolves are another team that have to be reckoned with, considering that they've been to back-to-back Western Conference Finals. So you can lump them in with the Lakers, Warriors. I would say Rockets right now. Rockets are obviously better than that. Phoenix, who's had a very good year. Can they make some noise? Those teams are actually could be pretty, I'll say dangerous. Does that mean they're going to go to a conference final or an NBA final? Probably not. But you can't discount LA, the Lakers. You can't discount Minnesota. Phoenix, the Warriors, I know based on their reputation and their pedigree, but I'm not a big believer in them. Even if they do make it into the tournament as, let's say, an 8th seed, come on. They're going to beat Oklahoma City? Or let's say if they're in that 7-8 and they win that game, so they entrench themselves in a 7th seed, and as constituted right now, they're beating the Spurs. And people say, well, JAYREELZ, that's experience against a young upstart team. Okay, you could argue that. But what happened there last year where Golden State, they went up against Minnesota, and I understand Minnesota's a little bit more seasoned, but they ran them out of the gym. Now, they beat Houston last year in the opening round, Golden State, but that's when they had Jalen Green, didn't have Kevin Durant, younger team, and obviously Golden State took them to the back of the woodshed. But I'm not a big believer in Golden State. And I understand that the league wants to see Steph Curry, and they want to see if they can go deep into a playoff. And with guys getting hurt, and you saw Steph Curry got hurt last year, and Jimmy Butler had to carry the load, and then he also tweaked the hammy, I believe, and then Jonathan Kuminga had to come in. I mean, it's a mess. So I'm not a big believer in Golden State. Sorry. To my guy Val out on the West Coast, who's a big supporter of the channel and a big supporter of the podcast. And then you have Portland and the Clippers. All right, Portland with the Shaden Sharps of the world and the Donnie, I can't pronounce his name, Avdija, who's an all-star this year. And listen, that's a good story. Portland on the map, who knows? You saw Damian Lillard shooting threes and winning the three-point contest. Is he going to be available at some point as he tries to make a comeback? I know he's, 35 years old. He's not Jason Tatum, as I talked about before, where he's 28, 29. But I'm sure that would be a shot in the arm for Portland as they try to fight it out there in the play-in scenario. And then you have the Clippers, who's pretty much Kawhi Leonard and no one else. I mean, listen, they have a couple of players on the team, but we know it's Kawhi's team now, knowing that James Harden got traded and Bradley Beal has been long gone in the sense that he's been injured and is not coming back. And the Clippers, listen, they're going to make it. They currently have a 5-game lead over the Grizzlies there for that final spot. So Kawhi's going to take them as far as they can. And he's the only guy that you're really going to try to defend against if you're right now Portland, who the Clippers would play if the season ended today. But how I look at it, on a whole, you got a lot of teams that are in the mix. The East got a little bit more interesting with the James Harden trade because it's not just Pistons, Celtics, Knicks. One of those 3 teams could come out. But here's what I have when it comes to the 5 teams, and I think there's only 5 teams that can make the NBA final. And people say, what, JAYREELZ? What? There's got to be more than that. It's usually like 6 or 7 teams, right? No, here are my 5 that I think can win not just go to an NBA final. I'm talking about winning. Because, yes, the Celtics will go to an NBA final. Can the Cavaliers go to an NBA? Yes, they can. Does that mean they're going to win? No. So the 5 teams I think that can win an NBA final this year: Detroit, New York, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Denver. I think those are the 5 teams that can win the NBA finals this year. Now, I'm sure there's people in Boston. Yours truly, a Celtic fan. Well, JAYREELZ, come on. They've overachieved. They played well. If Tatum comes back, they got a shot to win a final, right? Win a final and go to are 2 different things. I mean, think about it. If they're going to go to a final, let's just say, and they're going to play Oklahoma City or San Antonio, you think they're going to be able to stop those guys? You think they're going to be able to stop SGA? And if Jalen Williams could get healthy, I understand he's out of the lineup again with a hamstring. And with their defensive prowess, that they're going to key in on Jaylen Brown. And yes, they're going to want to make the Celtics shoot 3-pointers, and we know that's their MO. But yeah, if the Celtics are going to make anywhere between 15 to 23s a game, they're going to win a game. Anything less than that, if they go 12 for 46, that's going to be tough sledding for them to win. So that's how that game is predicated. And to me, if they get Tatum back and we know that Tatum's 100% healthy, then that all bets are off. Then you got to throw them in as a team that can win an NBA final. But I don't think they can win based on that. And do I think that the Knicks, they could get to a final, but I don't think they're going to win. Detroit, I think they're going to get to a final. Can they win? I think they can. I don't think they will. I think the team that's going to win a final is going to come out of the West. And to me, it's either be OKC, San Antonio, or Denver. Now, one of those teams are going to cannibalize one another because think about it. If you have a Denver, San Antonio, and I know I'm getting way too ahead of this right now, but this is part of the whole crystal ball of the second half or final third of the season. And once we get to April, then we'll really get into the playoff storylines and crystal ball. But just for argument's sake and for the sake of sports talk fodder, if it's San Antonio, Denver in a conference semifinal, one of those 2 teams are going to beat each other up to, you would think, 6, maybe 7 games. And then they're going to go up against OKC, who's going to have to play the winner, in all likelihood, of the 4-5 matchup, which is either Houston or the Lakers. And who knows? They could probably push OKC to 6, maybe 7. But then now you're going to have the winner of San Antonio, Denver, go up against the OKC, Houston, LA winner. And we would think it's going to be OKC, but now they're going to go at it. And to me, whomever's going to be in that Western Conference final, I said this the other day, that's going to be equivalent to Rams Seahawks in the NFC Championship game as that being the Super Bowl going into the Super Bowl. To me, whomever matches up in that Western Conference final, that's going to be the NBA final. And then, for all intents and purposes, whoever wins that's going to win the NBA championship. I mean, that's it. And that's not going out on a limb. That's not anything that's shocking because, yes, you could say, well, hey, I think Detroit could be formidable. And with their bad boy 2.0, 3.0 image, maybe they could out-physical OKC or San Antonio, et cetera. They could throw a lot of bodies at Wemby, et cetera. Yeah, they can. But that doesn't mean they're going to win. Listen, I give them a shot to win an NBA final, but if they were to play right now, OKC and Detroit, I'd have to put my money on the Thunder. Spurs, maybe a little bit tricky because inexperience could play into it. And I talked about that yesterday on the live stream every Wednesday, 12 noon, where right now the Spurs, they're going to take a big step because this team's going to go into the playoffs in uncharted territory. And for them to kind of learn their way to know what it's like to win playoff series, they haven't done that. Similar to what we saw 2 years ago with Oklahoma City, as I talked about, how OKC had a 1 seed and they got to a second round, but they lost to Dallas in 6. And, all right, you give them a pass as a 1 seed because they're a young team on the come-up. Last year, 1 seed, won 68 games, had a remarkable season, and to me, it was all bets are off. They got to get to a final and even win the damn thing. And what do? They did exactly just that. Spurs are going to follow that same path where there's expectations. A lot's going to be on Victor Wembanyama, his first ever playoff appearance. Everybody's going to want to see what he's going to do. So if they fall in the second round, would you be shocked? I can't say I would. But it would be a learning experience. It would be a stepping stone to bigger and better things down the road. Just like I said, similar to what OKC went through 2 years ago before winning a title last year. So when you have that going on, and to me, I think the NBA Finals winner is going to come out of the Western Conference. Now, when we get to April, especially when we get to that Thursday podcast before April 18th, you know I'm going to have my tentacles all over that and get into the storylines and break it all down and see what we look at from there. Whether or not the Pistons are a legitimate, not just title contender, but winning the whole thing. So, but that's what I have in my second half as I take my little peek behind the curtain. And, of course, any questions, thoughts, whatever, just pop them in the comments there, and I'll talk about that in the second hour once I get through the sports agenda here. Other news and notes in the NBA. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. One thing I didn't talk about last week, and a terrible job on my part, hand raised high in the air, was Chris Paul retiring. 21 years. Remember, he was part of that trade where he got shipped to, what did he get shipped to? Was it Toronto? And I believe they were going to release him, but decided to just retire. And it's a shame because when you look at his career, 21 years, former Rookie of the Year, he's going into the Hall of Fame on roller skates. You could argue whether or not he's a top 5 point guard of all time. I wouldn't put him there. And today's not the day to discuss that. Maybe when he gets inducted, we could talk about his career, etc. But we all know, labeled a point god, bounced around on a million teams. But if you're going to identify him with one team in particular, it's going to be the Clippers. Because the Clippers were this team by way of Buffalo, New York as the Braves, San Diego with the Clippers, up the coast. They've had just a terrible existence. They've had some moments in the 90s with the Mark Jackson, Doc Rivers teams where they made it to the playoffs. Didn't do much. And then obviously with Lob City, Chris Paul, his arrival there, Blake Griffin, that was pretty much the Clipper heyday. And then, yes, they did make it to a conference final in 2021 for the first time ever in their franchise's history before losing to Phoenix in 6 games. But for Paul, a remarkable career. All the best to him in his next NBA life. I didn't give him his proper due, so I want to do that now. And I understand it's about, 10, 11 days too late. But the old saying, better late than never. As far as the players hurt, etc., guys like Kyrie Irving is not going to come back this year, and that's a no-brainer. He says he's going to come back fully ready to go next year. He'll be 34 next month. Why even bother coming back? The team is out of the playoff race. There's no need for him to come back to even attempt to possibly, dare I even say, re-injure himself. So you're not going to see Kyrie until next year. Kudos to him as he recovers, and we'll see him at 100% come October. You also have 2 other players, and you got to wonder, tanking, the word around the NBA in these weeks, or the last couple of weeks or so, with Domantas Sabonis and Zach LaVine done for the year. And you got to wonder whether or not Sacramento is going to be tanking big time. Now, listen, if they're hurt and they're done, and we haven't seen Zach LaVine or Sabonis for quite some time, well, I believe Sabonis has been in and out of the lineup, but still, he has not been healthy pretty much dating back to the early part of the season. So those guys are kaput. And then you also had a passing, Doug Moe, the former Nugget coach, who had those crazy Blazers, had the salt and pepper hair, those Nuggets teams of the 80s who are high scoring, the Alex English, T.R. Dunn, Kiki Vandeweghe, teams that would, play no defense, but they could run up the score big time. In fact, they had that one game, was it in 84, I think it was? I think it was 1984, where the Pistons played the Nuggets, and the final was 186 to 184. Regulation. I don't believe it was an overtime either. It goes to show you how their offense was built back then and had a very good career there in Denver. I believe bounced around a couple other places after that, but died at the age of 87, long bout of cancer. Thoughts, prayers, condolences go out to the Moe family, the Nuggets, the NBA on his passing. So That's what I have there with the NBA. As far as the college basketball goes, really starting to pick up here, and that's weird because when we look at the end of the NFL season with the divisional playoff, the championship Sunday, the Super Bowl, there were things happening, things percolating, things going on. But now that the dust is settled on an NFL season and the Super Bowl's in our rearview mirror, 10 days and counting, all of a sudden, like college basketball is now just risen in our sports consciousness to the point where now you have a situation where Michigan is now entrenched into number one after beating Purdue, and with Arizona losing those 2 games last week, you have Michigan now at the top, number one in the nation. As Michigan, they're looking as formidable as anyone out there, and I'm sure is going to be, when all's said and done, you would think they would be the 1 seed overall in the tournament. Still have about 3.5 weeks to play before we get to that point, but they've been very consistent. They've been just stellar all year long, and obviously we'll keep an eye on them as we continue to go through the rest of this college basketball regular season. Now, Texas Tech suffered a huge loss, not just by losing to Arizona State, but JT Toppin, who had a big game beating Arizona over the weekend in Arizona, tears his ACL there. I believe it was a Tuesday night. Terrible blow for them. And they look like they could have been a team that maybe could have gone to a Final Four, but all of those hopes right now look like they're dashed. So that's a huge loss, not only just for Texas Tech, but for college basketball, considering that they have played well this year. We just saw them beat Arizona, and then now to have him go down the way he did, just a terrible story for the kid and for their team for that matter. So we're not going to see him throughout. UConn last night losing to Creighton at home, as for whatever reason, they couldn't shoot the ball into the ocean off the side of a boat. They went ice cold there in the second half, and give it up for Creighton, who I know one of the players, his mom had passed away within the last couple of weeks and had a big game there. I forgot I think his name is Dix. Let me just double check that. I'll look that up real quick. But he had a big second half as Creighton. I mean, who would have thought on the road in Stores for them to go in and beat the Huskies the way they did, and understand the Huskies played a big part in that. But as I pull that up, it's Josh Dix. Yes, it is. So you have that going on. In fact, let me put up the graphic here. There we go. How about it? Graphics. I got graphics here for a reason, people, and I missed the NBA. Oh, yeah. Just to go show you, NBA resumes tonight. The 5 final teams. I'm going in rewind mode here. So now as we get back to college basketball, so UConn losing at home, so they'll probably take a hit in the rankings as well. But as we all know, this isn't college football where if you're in the top 10 and you fall out of the top 12, outside looking in, college football playoff, These teams, you're going to see them there. Not an issue, no problem whatsoever. But you got to think about, obviously, when it comes to the strength of schedule, when it comes to the indexes here, how they measure these teams and beating top-ranked teams, top 5, top 10, top 25, et cetera. So those are metrics that are going to be used here by the committee to see who gets picked, who gets selected, who's on the bubble, et cetera. I know you had that wild game last night with Arkansas. I know the rookie Darius Acuff had 49. That was in double overtime, but they lose to Alabama. So that certainly is a win for Alabama that would help them if they're going to be a team when you're going to look at who they've beaten here throughout the course of this regular season. So for college basketball right now, it is on and popping. And it's going to be like that from now through the first Monday in April, where you'll have the Final Four and obviously the championship game. And I believe that's in Indianapolis this year. So college basketball, let me see if there's anything else here. I know he had a situation with Mick Cronin taking his own player out after a block shot. And I thought it was a hard foul. When I looked at the highlight, it was actually rather brief. And then Cronin, I know his comments got after it with a reporter. And UCLA, I know, falling on hard times there, considering. And, I mean, that's got to be tough for any team. Remember, UCLA's in the Big Ten. So they had to fly to play Michigan, lost to Michigan, and then play Michigan State, staying in the state, doing a in-state doubleheader. Of course, not the same day, but you get what I'm saying. And for them to lose, listen, I know somewhere, whether you're Bill Walton or John Wooden, I know they're spinning in their grave knowing that the team is just right now flailing here a little bit. And all you could do is, if you're UCLA, you can only hope and pray that better days do lie ahead. But let's see. Yeah, that's what I have with the college basketball rankings. We know that will change come Monday, as we talked about with some of these teams that have had losses here. You know, the UConns and Arkansas. But obviously, when it comes to tournament, they're going to be fine. It's just a matter of where they're going to be ranked and what bracket, et cetera. But, of course, that's not for another 3.5 weeks, so we have plenty of time to chew on that before we can even think to unpack brackets and things of that nature. But let me see. I think that's it what I have for the college basketball for now. Yeah, that's what's happening there. All right, now let's pull the graphic up. Pay attention, because what I want to get to here are the Olympics. And I talked about this yesterday on the live stream, but right now, everything is lining up for a USA-Canada gold medal final. Now, both teams actually had a sweat out yesterday. Canada losing Sidney Crosby first, I believe in the second period due to a lower body injury. And based on what I read, he said that he is not going to be counted out. He's going to do his best to get back, whether that means tomorrow in the semifinal against Finland, or if they beat Finland into the final, whether that be against U.S. or Slovenia or Slovakia, I believe it is. Slovakia. So for Canada, who had a scenario where they were down late, they get a goal late in the third period to tie the game at 3, and then in the overtime where they were able to sweat it out, and I believe they scored early in that overtime. Who the hell got the goal in overtime? I got to pull that up. Now, mind you, I wasn't watching this live because this game was actually being played while I was doing my live stream. So as it was happening in real time was Mitch Marner. Yes. Mitch Marner, the former Maple Leaf, now on the Vegas Golden Knights, who you could question whether or not he's a big game player. Well, obviously he had a big-time goal for Canada to prevail, to sweat out that game. And generally, teams that have these rides, whether it be in the NCAA tournament in particular, because you're never going to have a cakewalk. It's never going to be a scenario where you're going to win every game by, in this case, 2 or 3 goals, or you're going to have such a run. And understand UConn did that in the last 2 years where they didn't really have that nail-biter type of game, because generally teams that get to and win a championship, or in this case, a gold medal, there's always going to be that one game you're going to sweat out. The one game that, the chips are down, or it's a toss-up. And kudos to Canada for winning that game yesterday. Like I said, down late, midway through the third, or getting to the back end of the third period and getting the goal, and then on top of that, winning it in overtime, which was the flip side for the U.S. because the U.S. had a 1-0 lead late in their game, and with a minute and a half to go, Mika Zibanejad scored a goal, the Ranger player, for Sweden to tie the game. And then into the overtime, you got to thank Quinn Hughes, the defenseman of the Minnesota Wild, for getting the winner there, because that would have been disastrous to think that if the U.S. hockey team, who led throughout, then gives up a goal there late in the third, and then would have blown the game altogether in overtime. Well, for them, that was not the case, and fortunate for them, because they lived to see another day similar to Canada. And now, like I said, everything's aligned to where we could get a USA-Canada final. But first, tomorrow, the semifinals, Canada, Finland, USA, and Slovakia. And if they do meet in the final, that'd be Sunday Eastern time at, I believe, 8:15 a.m. So I'll have to get up early to watch that, which is fine. And it's too early to kind of put the cart before the horse, considering how these 2 games unfolded yesterday for both Canada and U.S. But how I look at it is that Canada, I know that they're going to be pumped up and ready to go against U.S., and U.S. is going to have a lot of pressure going into that game. I understand they could say, we're loose, we're this, we're ready, and rightfully so, but Canada's had the best of them, whether it be in prior gold medal games. Of course, the first one comes to mind is 2010, Sidney Crosby in overtime in Vancouver. You even want to throw in the Four Nations face-off last year in Boston, where Connor McDavid scored the game-winning goal in overtime. But I will say, it would scare me a little bit if I'm the USA team, because I don't know if Connor Hellebuck, despite his brilliance in the regular season for Winnipeg, and yes, he's won Vezina trophies, and yes, we know he's an excellent goaltender, but sometimes in these big games, he could shrink. And just keep that in mind when we get to Sunday. Not trying to predict that he's going to fall apart, whatever, but you never know. But I'll be on top of it come Monday's podcast. I'll recap it, etc. And stay tuned to the channel, like I mentioned earlier, because you'll get shorts. You'll get a breakdown of my thoughts on the game. If both teams do advance, set it up for Sunday, etc. But that's where you got to stay locked in with all that's happening in sports to right here on this YouTube channel. And, of course, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts as well. But that's what you have there with the hockey. And, listen, I hope to see USA Canada. In fact, you have the women's today that are going to play. I know you have the bronze medal game, which is being played right now. And I think it's Sweden and Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken. But for USA and Canada, listen, USA, they've won, 4 games so far, maybe 5. I haven't really followed the women's hockey that closely. But similar to what the men's, where Canada has bested the Americans, well, the Americans have bested the Canadians in the women's hockey. Because I believe they won the last Olympics, if I'm not mistaken, in 2022. But it'll be interesting. So I'll keep my eyes on that today, as both of those squads will go at it for a gold. And then you've had a couple of these events. I know, congrats to Michaela Schifrin for winning the gold, the giant slalom there in skiing. I know she's come in, performed in the Olympics in the past, has not been able to come out with gold. Now she's able to do that. So I'm sure that's thankfully for her, a thrill unlike any other, lifelong goal, etc. And then you also had the one woman who, in the monobob, the oldest woman to win a gold medal at the Winter Olympics, what's her name? Elena Myers-Taylor, or Alana Myers-Taylor. I'll make sure I pronounce her name correctly. So congratulations to her. But it's weird because overall, and I'm not an Olympic guy, but the U.S. hasn't really put their fingerprints all over this Olympiad because, was it Norway and I think Italy are ahead of them in the gold medal rankings? And U.S. only has 7. And Norway has what? I think like 15. Usually U.S. is at the top or near the top of not only just medals overall, but even with gold medals, but not for whatever the reason. And I know Ilya Malinin probably hurt that a little bit, and maybe Lindsey Vonn to a certain extent as well. But generally, when the USA athlete dominates these, whether winter or summer games, not so much this time here in Milan. So we'll see what happens here over the course of these next few days, as the closing ceremonies will be Sunday evening. Of course, that's going to be in prime time. Obviously, that's going to be on tape delay here in the States. So for those who are going to look forward to that, obviously they got that to look forward to. And one other thing, too, I got to bring this up. I understand it's old news by now, but I have to say, I was shocked that the French Ice Hockey Federation suspended the player who got into the fight with Tom Wilson on Canada, Pierre Crignon. And I get it. As he's skating off the ice, he's cursing, and I believe was cursing toward the I didn't even know. I didn't even see that. The only highlight I saw was the fight itself, and it wasn't even a fight. I mean, come on. If anything, at worst, they got what? Double minor roughing, and I'm sure that wasn't even I couldn't even tell you what the penalties were, because at that point, I didn't really care, and Canada was blowing out France. But yeah, I was shocked that they suspended him. And maybe it was because of the things that he said. All right, fine. But at first, it was because he got into the fight with Wilson and his standards with Olympic hockey and, there's no such thing as fighting, whatever, blah, blah, blah. To me, and I understand it's over and done with now, and France is long gone from the tournament, but to suspend them? Really? I mean, how bad were his comments in order for them to suspend this player for one game? And it would have been the remainder as far as it would have gone. I mean, he was toast. There's no way he was going to come back. But anyway, that's what you have there with the Olympics. And also, yes, is it the best sports moment in the making? I got to throw that in there. How can I forget that real quick? Could be. When you think back to last year, the best sports moments, Game 7, Dodgers, Blue Jays, Rory winning the Masters, Alcaraz winning the French Open in a 5-set thriller over Jannik Sinner. This could be it. And I understand after Sunday, if these two teams do match up and it could go into overtime and Canada or U.S. can win, it'd be a bigger story if U.S. wins because they haven't been able to get over the hump. So that's why I think if the United States men's hockey team does win, it'll be deemed more as a big sports moment or the best sports moment of the year, more so than Canada. And it's not a knock on Canada, but we've seen this movie before. And let's say if Canada does win in a thriller or it's an overtime, and it will probably still be up there among the ranks. So just to keep that in mind as we move it along here throughout the remainder of this year, sports season, et cetera, to see whether or not that this could rank when it's all said and done as one of the best sports moments of 2026. All right, let's get to this here, people. Major League Baseball, as I lace up my cleats, get in the batter's box, take a couple of hacks here. Big news with Tony Clark, the former MLB Players Association executive director, steps down amid scandal and, let's face it, some sordid family details. I'll start off with the scandal. Do you remember the name Lloyd Howell, the former NFL PA executive director? And remember how he got ousted, or he had to resign, I should say, because he was out here gallivanting, traveling the country, running up private car bills, tabs at strip clubs in Miami, doing other shady transactions behind the scenes that we obviously were unbeknownst to us as fans at the time. Well, Tony Clark has been entangled in more ways than one, of course, in that type of behavior outside of the MLB offices on Park Avenue or Fifth Avenue, wherever they are. I think they're on Park Avenue. So for Tony Clark was involved in some sort of financial situation where, I don't want to say he's extorting or embezzling or with these allegations, but certainly a terrible optic considering what happened to the NFL or the former NFL PA executive director. And now you have a situation where Tony Clark had to resign with that on his shoulders, but then to add another layer to it, that they have found an inappropriate relationship with not only somebody who was hired, I believe, through Clark because of his connection with this particular lawyer, working with MLB, and then on top of that, knowing that they had this inappropriate relationship, which happened to be his brother's wife. I mean, can you make it up? Now, listen, we don't know the extent of it. We don't know if this has been going on for months, years, and I don't recall when she was hired by Major League Baseball to work with Clark, I guess on a lot of the player union provisions, what's happening, etc. So not only do you have him doing bad things, I'm not going to say off the diamond because he's not playing, bad things outside of baseball with money, but now he's doing bad things in a personal life. So a double whammy for Tony Clark, which obviously looks terrible. And Clark, obviously, you're not going to hear from him anymore. But now you have a situation where Major League Baseball is left with who's going to be appointed the new baseball or NFL or MLB PA executive director. As I'm sure you heard outside, I got dogs barking. So now they've promoted Bruce Meyer, who worked with Clark hand in hand as a guy who's a litigator. He's the lawyer. He's looking at the contracts. He's looking at all the fine print, blueprint, whatever it has to do with the CBA to work with the owners and the commissioner. So now he's the interim. And he's come out to say, and I'm paraphrasing, how he's going to look at this and go over this with a fine-tooth comb, that this is a scenario where I'm sticking up for the players, and rightfully so. He's working with, at the time, in conjunction with Tony Clark. But now he's the interim guy. baseball needs to get an official guy there, because is Bruce Meyer, no matter how well-versed he is in baseball parlance, we know in legal vernacular and language, I'm sure he could do that with his eyes closed and half asleep, but are the players, they understand that he's on board now 100%, and I don't doubt that in the least, but you also have to think, this guy isn't a former player. Is this guy, although he's going to be in our best interest, but is he going to fight? Is he going to scratch? Is he going to claw? Is he going to bite? The way Tony Clark would as a former player. And I even mentioned this yesterday, and this was, I know, a shot in the dark. I thought if there was one guy that would be good to be the follow up would be the predecessor, or no, would be the heir apparent to Tony Clark, is Curtis Granderson. Granderson, good guy, well-respected. I know he does the post-game, pre-game, and post in the playoffs for MLB. And that's if he wants the job. But I always thought that he'd be a guy that would be a perfect executive director to lead the players as far as all that goes on with the collective bargaining agreement, making sure I's are dotted, T's are crossed, etc. But now to go back to my original point, will they hire a guy to be full-time and not just the interim? Or are they going to go into the regular season with Bruce Meyer as the head of the union? I think that's dangerous, if you ask me. And it's not to say that he's going to do anything wrong, but I would think the owners are going to really stand pat here. They're going to throw the word salary cap out there. And I'm sure Bruce Meyer's going to be like, stiff arm it. 100%. But you also have to ask yourself, is this going to be a situation where, because there's not a player at the helm that knows the ins and outs, ups and downs, speaks to other players? I'm sure Meyer has spoken to other players, but not the way Tony Clark does, where that could be just a bit of a drawback in these negotiations moving forward, and the impact that it's going to have as to what the owners are going to want to do here, and how Meyer, if he is going to be the full-time guy, how he's going to handle all this. I think those are legitimate questions. And I got to say, if they do appoint a player there and take the interim off and Meyer is going to be on the committee, then fine. And understand that player is going to be green, and although he was a former player and knows what it takes and has been in the rooms, and maybe is a former player rep of a Major League Baseball team that could handle this and withstand all the pressures and the speak and the back and forth, fine. But this is going to be daunting for that player, because the players are going to stand pat. And this union is the strongest union on the globe. The NFLPA doesn't have the power that Major League Baseball has, as evidenced what we've seen here in recent years. Extending the schedule to 17 games. They want to go to an 18th game. International games. All this nonsense that we've seen here throughout the years. And yes, collectively bargained. Major League Baseball, the minute they hear salary cap, nope. Zip it. NFL can't do that. And I understand the players, as we talked about weeks ago here on the podcast, where they've said that a majority of the players do not want to have an 18th game. And you know what the owners are going to say? We'll see about that. Because an 18th game is going to come. Whereas with baseball, salary cap? Nope. Hey, guys, what do you think about a salary? Nope. All right, we want to bring this to the table. Is the salary cap? Yeah. Nope. They're staunch, steadfast. They ain't having it. But this go around, I think it's going to be a lot different. And I've said this before, and we got plenty of time to talk about it. But for right now, just for the moment, I think it's imperative that baseball does appoint a guy that's not Bruce Meyer. I would think even before the start of the season. Because what are you going to do? Are you going to wait until the All-Star break to get this guy in here and then bring him up to speed on what's going on? And that's not to say he doesn't know what's going on, but you get my point. I'm sure they want to get a guy before March 25th when the Yankees and the Giants play on Netflix there Wednesday to kick off the baseball season. I would think that they want to have a guy entrenched there as Here's our guy that's going to lead us on the player side to see where we're going to go with this collective bargaining agreement. And Meyer, of course, will stay on board. I am fascinated. Everybody knows baseball is my first love. I want them to do the right thing by the sport. If you don't know how I feel about a salary cap in baseball, I'm one that is on board for that. I'm sorry, players. The sport is in shambles in this regard. When the Dodgers go out and get Edwin Diaz and Kyle Tucker to a team that's already loaded, to a team that's already won back-to-back World Series here over the last 2 years, and they're going for a third, which we haven't seen in over 25 years, and they're the ones that are getting these players, this is the system. I've said it a million times. It has to be fixed. And the only way to fix it is a salary cap. Not just the ceiling. You got to have a floor too. So for the Pirates, the Marlins, they can cry all they want. Oh, we can't compete with the Dodgers and the Mets and the Phillies and the Red Sox and the Yankees and the Cubs. So the owner in Pittsburgh, the owner in Colorado, the owner in Miami, the owner in, you name it. Go through all the AL Central, Cleveland. I understand they're competitive and they make the postseason, but come on. We know they can't go up against the big dogs. Kansas City. I mean, please. There's no way. They can cry about it all they want. But they know damn well that the only way to fix it is have a salary cap. How's it work for the NFL? How's it work for the NBA? How's it work for the NHL? I think it's worked perfectly fine, if you ask me. Because it's not like every year you see Lakers Knicks, Lakers Celtics, Celtics Golden State. I understand they're the sexy matchups because of where they're from, but you do get an OKC Indiana. Or in the NFL, you do get a situation where it's not just LA versus New York. You know, it's not Jets or Giants versus the Chargers or Rams. And I understand that's a strange Super Bowl, but you understand what I'm saying. Yeah, you get Seattle. And I understand Seattle, they're not a small market, but come on. You got the Bengals in the Super Bowl as you saw 4 years ago. You get teams that are competitive. Pirates, Marlins, Rockies, Angels. I understand they're Anaheim. Those teams can't even get a sniff into the playoffs. It's got to be fixed. I don't know how else to say it. All right, let me touch on this real quick. So the Met owner came out and said no captain, right? Not under my watch as long as I'm the owner of the Mets. Okay. But then also in the same breath, he comes out and says, the locker room is unique. I'll let them take care of it. And I'm paraphrasing. Of course, he doesn't want to appoint a captain because then he doesn't want to get people jealous. So if that means, I'm going to appoint Lindor to captain, where Juan Soto obviously is making the most money on the team, and it's going to be there for 14 more years after this, where Lindor may be here for 6 years, because it's quite possible he's been in rumors for trades here over the last, 6-7 months or so. So he didn't want to upset the apple cart? All right, fine. But he just could have said, under my watch, no captain, case closed, that's it. Why did he even say in one breath that, and in the other breath, I'll let the locker room deal with it? Well, what does that mean? So they're going to draw straws, and then Lindor's going to come out and say, all right, I know the owner said that he's not going to appoint a captain, no captains, but the players have chosen me to lead this team, so I'm the unofficially official captain. Only the Mets. And I'll just leave it right there. Anything else happening in baseball? Let me take a look. Yeah, I want to make sure I got everything else down here. Yeah, one thing I didn't talk about the other day, Zach Gallen re-signed for 1 year in Arizona, which I thought for a guy that actually is a good arm, he's a good number 3 starter, he was worth anybody. I even thought the Mets, why not? But 1 year, I think it's $22 million he signed for, as Arizona tries to get themselves back to respectability after making it to the World Series now almost 3 years. Crazy. And then MLB, the ABS system. Guess what? It's live, direct, and in full effect. Kind of like yours truly. No, but in all seriousness, the Major League Baseball has approved it. And how they're breaking down the rules are this. In-game 2 challenges. And even if you use up your 2 challenges in the first 9 innings, you do get another challenge in the extra innings. So I think you only get 1, though. So you can't go crazy with balls and strikes in extra innings where, oh, that was close. All right, can we challenge that? Oh, that was close. Can we challenge this? Oh, wait a minute. You know what? Can we get a third chance? No. I think it's just 1 shot, but you do get 2 in-game, and I would think you got to use them wisely. I don't think you want to do it in the second inning with a runner on first and 1 out where that was ball 4, and even if the top of the order's coming up, you got to use it wisely. I'm sure 5th inning, 6th inning, obviously in the later innings you're going to do that. But you've been warned. The ABS, automated ball strike system, is coming, and I believe it's going to start here in the exhibition season, which begins on Saturday. So keep that in mind as well. All right, and then lastly, let me put on the helmet and shoulder pads. NFL, just a couple of quick news and notes I want to discuss. As you saw, Patrick Mahomes will have his contract restructured. So I believe he's going to get a $75 million cap hit. Now it's respectable. I think it's like 34 now. And they're going to have to do the same to Chris Jones, the defensive lineman. Obviously, free up some money. I know they got some guys there. The Drew Tranquils of the world, and I believe the Mike Danas, and there's another person that's on there that could be released or cap casualties. But with that being said, do you wonder if there's going to be a reunion of sorts between Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? I think it's possible. I don't think it's a slam dunk, though, by any means. Obviously, Hill's coming off of that terrible knee injury that he suffered, ACL, MCL, etc. Now, he did say that he's going to come back faster than ever. The Cheetah's going to make a return. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to try to lobby for him. And the NFL, quote-unquote, new season begins March 11th. That's where free agency and trades and all that could start. But that's one that a lot of people, I'm sure, are going to keep an eye on, considering that Patrick Mahomes is coming off his own knee injury, number 1. But number 2, as they had their down year and as they try to get back on the beam, back to their lofty perch of being a team that is at the top of the AFC, obviously a team that's made it to several Super Bowls here over these last, 7, 8 years. And I would not be surprised if Hill, less money, but does make a return back. But I don't think it's going to happen. But would I be surprised? Absolutely not. So that's number 1. Number 2, the Allen Estate, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, the Seattle Seahawks are for sale. And why not? I know there's probably a majority that are saying, wait a minute, you guys just won a Super Bowl. You guys are the toast of the NFL. Look at what you've done. Sam Darnold, his redemption story. Kenneth Walker was the MVP. And, oh, by the way, he's going to be a cap casualty too, as he's not going to be franchised. So, yeah, why not? To me, it's get out when the getting is good. And who knows how much that team's going to be worth? You would think minimum, if the Washington Commanders were worth $6.1 billion, I mean, this team's going to be worth at least $8 billion. I don't know if they're going to be worth 10 or more. And we don't know for sure what the Cowboys are worth, because we would think that they're probably, if not in the NFL, throughout sports overall, the most biggest as far as worth goes when it comes to any professional sports team. But I would think they're probably going to be in a range between 8 to 10 billion, maybe 7. I mean, it's not the Cowboys, it's not the Packers, it's not the Steelers. It's not any of those cornerstone franchises that, oh, yeah, I could see what that team's going to be worth. Or, yeah, I could see that team being worth that much. The Raiders, Dolphins to a lesser degree. But, yeah, we'll see how that goes and how that, who it gets sold to and et cetera, as the bidding has begun. And then lastly, the Niners, it's been reported that they're not going to have one. They're going to have 2 international games. We know about the one in Australia against the Rams, but then getting word that they're going to play in Mexico City in December. Now, the opponent is to be determined. We don't know who they're going to play just yet. The schedule comes out in the middle of May. Well, that second Wednesday, Thursday in May. So I know everybody's going to be pumped up and ready to go once you get past the draft. All right, when is the schedule coming out? Who is going to play whom, when, where, etc. But the Niners, and they'll be the home team there, where they'll be the road team going to Australia to play the Rams. So that's what we got so far. And drips and drabs as the new season begins. I'm sure they're going to release, this team's playing against the Cowboys in Rio. Oh, this team's playing on the moon. This one's playing in Mars. You know how that goes. Because now you're going to have international games all over the place. In Paris, we know the Saints are going to be there. Obviously, London, you're going to have either Berlin or Munich in Germany. I believe you're going to have another game in Ireland. So the NFL is going global, as you know, and I'm sure we'll start getting the trickle effect of which teams are going to play prior to the draft. And then after the draft, you're probably going to get, this team's playing at Seattle to open up the NFL season. Or, yes, here is this team playing the Cowboys in Rio the Friday after the season opener. Because, the NFL, they got to suck the oxygen out of the room. They can't get out of their own way. They got to make sure that, the games aren't being played and no bets and in-game bets are being wagered. And on top of that, my fantasy football team, I don't have a team just yet. Yeah, it may be quiet on that front, but the NFL, that they're going to be coming out with their chest puffed out to show that we may not be playing, but we're still here. And they don't want the sports fan to ever forget that the NFL is king, is impenetrable, is the dominant one when it comes to the major sports, especially here in this country. All right, let's get to your comments. Let's see what we got here. All right, and I'll go through this. So I see Jackson Curry. I hope you're still here, Jackson, with us. Yeah, I like that emoji that you got there. Val. Ryan, sounds pre-recorded? Why does it sound pre-recorded? Why is it are my lips moving, but I'm doing the old Kung Fu movie effect? Yes, Ryan, I remember. I don't know if you're still on. Reed, good to see you, Sacramento. I know, Reed, if you're still with us here, which I hope you are, you know what that means. They are quietly trying to tank their season. Grant, good to see you back again. I appreciate you. Nice meeting you earlier. Jackson, who responded to live chat after the podcast. Yes. Thank you, Jackson, for that. So here I am with everybody. Bio, yeah, I'm with you. Now, here's the thing. Who did I pick as my NBA final? Oh, I got to go back. I think I picked Denver, I believe. And you know what? I think I went out on a limb on the other one, and it's bad. It's really bad. I wanted to be different. That's why. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. I think I picked the Milwaukee Bucks, did I not? Yep. I picked Denver over Milwaukee in an NBA final. And the reason why I picked Milwaukee, because I thought, I don't know Lillard, and it was Giannis and everybody else, but I thought Giannis was, for whatever the reason, even with all the trade rumors that were swirling, I thought he was going to just have a monster year, knowing that he was showcasing himself to show the rest of the league that, yeah, I'm still here. I can still dominate, whatever. And even if that meant him being traded. But, yeah, that was a terrible pick. I picked Denver. But, listen, OKC is not a – listen, OKC is a smart pick. 100%. Fuqua, they do, and defense does win. Robert Cochran, welcome. Hope you're still around. And look at this. CP3 is the one who brought the Thunder to OKC. You know what? You're absolutely right, because when, of course, drafted by the Hornets, and they played in OKC prior to OKC getting the team from Seattle. And remember, that was all Hurricane Katrina, and they had to move the Hornets there from New Orleans to Oklahoma City. And then obviously Oklahoma City Thunder from Seattle. But yeah, he had big time years. Now, didn't have a lot of success there. There you go, Robert. On top of it. I love it. I love the sports fans being on top of it. Yeah, Warriors, so many injuries. Yeah, they've been hurting. Thank you, Val. Appreciate that. Let's see. Robert. Yes. Because they have the Thunder, that is, they had the Clippers #1 pick from the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander trade. Paul George. Yes, Doug Moe. Go back. They did. Yeah, and he was a character with the pattern jackets and the wild hair. Yeah, no, sad to hear about his passing. Tigers uniform orange and black, and the uniform will be black and orange. Oh, they got new uniforms? I guess that's also on X1. Hope you're still around. Michigan Duke final. Now, they're going to play each other this weekend. I didn't talk about that. So, and they play Saturday, don't they? You know what? I didn't go through the NBA schedule. Terrible job on my part. Let me do that real quick. And the college basketball, let me just double check. Yeah, how did I miss that? That is just a bad job on my part. When are they playing? Saturday, right? Let's see, Saturday. That's probably in prime time, though. Yeah, Arizona, Houston. That's definitely a big game there Saturday. Yeah, let me scroll to prime time. Yeah, 6:30, Michigan at Duke. Yeah, that's going to be great. And they're not playing in Cameron Indoor. They're playing actually in D.C., where the Wizards play. And quickly, your NBA schedule. Your 2 prime games tonight, Detroit at New York, Boston, Golden State. Games of note, Houston at Charlotte, Brooklyn at Cleveland, Atlanta, Philly, Toronto, Chicago, Phoenix, San Antonio, Orlando, Sacramento, Denver at the Clippers. Tomorrow, ESPN, Dallas and Minnesota, Clippers at Lakers. Then you have Cleveland at Charlotte. Yeah, that's what's pretty. Brooklyn at OKC. Denver, Portland. Not great. Saturday, Houston at Phoenix on NBA TV. Your Saturday night showcase, Rockets at Knicks. That's a good one. Sacramento, San Antonio, Memphis, Miami, Detroit, Chicago, Philly, New Orleans. And then Sunday, you have a triple header. ABC, NBC. 1 o'clock, Cleveland at Oklahoma City. Followed by Denver, Golden State at 3:30. That's 1 and 3:30. 6:30 is Boston at LA for the Lakers. And then in between, Orlando at LA to Clippers. Portland, Phoenix. Philly, Minnesota. Charlotte, Washington. Toronto, Milwaukee. Yes, that's what you got. That is your NBA. Oh, and I see next week, Monday. That's a goodie. San Antonio at Detroit. Get a little ahead of myself because we'll be back on the airways Monday, but you get my drift. All right, let's see what we got. Bears announced they promoted Jeff King to assistant GM. Oh, okay. North Carolina guy. Is that right, Juan? Yeah, South Korea has not played. 7 likes. Oh, thank you, Val. On top of it. Hey, Jackson, welcome back. On the state 20, KG returned. Oh, returned to Minnesota? Yeah, because then he got bought out by the Nets. And yeah, then went back to Minnesota, I believe. All right, here we go. Fuqua. Owners willing to sit out. WBC should start their own league. See, the problem with that is, Fuqua, is then you're going to have to fly all over the world. Because, I mean, you can't have all these games in the States or in the Caribbean. So, all right, what does that mean for Japan? What does that mean for Korea? Yeah, I know they have an Israeli team in Italy, which, but it sounds good. But yeah, I would almost be next to impossible to do. What's this, Kevin Sullen? Oh, look at that. 16. Imagine WBC League with a 17 games. I know you'd have to spread it out every week because what are you going to do? What if Japan plays the U.S., but the game is in the Tokyo Dome? I mean, you're going to need a week to get acclimated there, come back. Rutrow bio, close your ears. Your Dodgers. I was, not in a disparaging way, of course. League, yeah. Over-unders are out. What did I say? NFL can't help themselves. Rams 10.5, Steelers 8.5. Oh, I got to look at that. Hold on. 2026. Yeah, 36 minutes ago. Wow, they have. And I know this is early. This could change. Oh, they didn't give me the whole thing. How come? Oh, here we go. The Buffalo Bills, 10.5. Patriots 9.5. Jets 5.5. Dolphins 4.5. Then AFC, Ravens 10.5. Bengals 9.5. 8.5. Steelers 6.5. Browns. Oh, wow. AFC South, Houston, Jacksonville 9.5. Indianapolis 8.5. Tennessee 6.5. That's high for Tennessee. When did they win? 3 games last year? Now, Kansas City 10.5. Chargers 10.5. Denver 9.5. Raiders 5.5. Eagles 10.5. Cowboys 8.5. Commanders, Giants 7.5. Lions, Packers 10.5. Bears 9.5. Vikings 8.5. Yeah. South, Tampa 8.5. Saints 7.5. Falcons 6.5. Panthers 6.5. And then lastly, 10.5, 10.5, 10.5 for the Rams, Seattle, and San Francisco, Arizona 4.5. Wow. 10 days after the Super Bowl, they already have those out. 25 medals, USA, Italy. Yep, Norway. 34. No, they've had a great Olympics so far. Can ABS challenge the rest of the team? Better not think of it. Yeah. I agree with you there, Fuqua. 3 races, 3 podiums, Jordan. All right. Thank you, Val. Play for his first ever medal. Wow. Kudos to them. Volcano, Philippines. Okay. RH. Oh, no. All right, RH. I know you want to talk about Bad Bunny, but I updated you on a sports news JAYREELZ, by the way. Yes. I love it. Thanks. Best podcast. What can I tell you, Val? I appreciate that. Yes. Big supporter. Poor Mike LaFleur going to be coaching another. Yeah, that's well. Listen, there's only 32 of these jobs, and if it's available, and if you interview for it and get it, you just got to go with it. Crystal, long-time watcher, first-time chatter. Welcome aboard. Yeah, right now I'm going through the comments and stuff. Let's see. Anything else happening here that we could talk about? Let's see what's happening in the hockey game. I know it's 1:10. Still got another hour. Why isn't this working? All right. Crosby by no means out of games, Cooper says. Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, that's all that's going on. That's all that's happening. Lane Johnson to return for 26th season. All right, for the Eagle fan out there. To my guy, DeNavis, who's a big Eagle fan. And, yeah. I think that covers it, people. That just about does it. Uh-oh. My dog is coughing up over there. I want to be bad today. Lasagna for lunch? Why not? Where would you go to get lasagna? In your neighborhood. Yes. Very good, Val. You already know. Speaking of which, I'm hungry too. I will sign off shortly and finally eat. But with that being said, what are you looking forward to most this weekend? I know NBA tonight's going to be interesting. I'll keep an eye on both games. I'll watch, of course, Celtics Warriors, Pistons. I'll watch that too. But yeah, again, no Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart. So who knows? That could be 71-46 Knicks halftime. Oh, workplace cafeteria. All right. Well, I hope they make it good for you there, Fuqua. Of course, I appreciate you hopping on board. Yep, Mets Marlins. Yeah, let me see something. Talk about spring training. Hold on. Any NBA, MLB. Yeah, nothing with the Major League Baseball. Braves to start with Schwellenbach and Waldrip. Big whoop. Yeah, that's going to about do it, people. Baseball actually starts tomorrow. 5 games, but Saturday, all the games will begin. Tomorrow's Yankees, Orioles. Kansas City, Texas. Okay. Yeah, that'll do it. I think that's yes. Bio. Baseball is just about back. Listen, I'm ready for it. Still got a month to go, but I'm ready. 5 weeks. 5 weeks from today, in fact. A week after the tournament. Pirates at Mets. Paul Skeens. Freddie Peralta. I would think he's going to be your opening day starter, unless Nolan McLean, who knows. But that's what I got, people. Any other last-minute comments? Things you want to say in the chat? Oh, what's this? Yes, I did see that. Bad blow for the Twins on 2 fronts. Not only you lose a pitcher, but that's a guy they probably could have dangled at the deadline. Good pitcher, Marlins. Obviously, the last couple of years with the Twins. And that'll be a significant loss. Bio, catch everyone on the flip. Yes. Have a great sports day, everyone. Absolutely. Yeah, with that said, people, if you have any last comments, things you want to say, now's your chance. Because, as you all know, this is what I love to do. It's in the blood. It's in the DNA. You know how that goes, but. Oh, is that another comment? All right. That'll do it for another podcast, people. I appreciate you stopping by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about what goes on in the toy department of life called sports. One more time, if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the channel here at JAYREELZ for all the latest sports talk, real sports talk, true sports talk, no clickbait, rage bait. I can promise you that. Also on Apple, Spotify, throw me a few stars, write a review. That will increase the visibility of the podcast, of this channel as well. With all the others that are out there, me trying to blaze a path, carve a trail in this podcast universe in order to thrive, in order to generate income, in order to make a living, doing what it is that I love. And I've been doing this full time for now well over 2 years, as you well know, or for those who don't know, yes, that's what I've been doing. So definitely stay locked in on the channel and the podcast platforms. And if you want to hit me up on any of my social media accounts, you could do so at the following: on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ Podcast, or JAYREELZ on Instagram, Twitter, JAYREELZ1 just a number, Twitch, JAYREELZ1 just a number, or the old-fashioned way, the JAYREELZ Podcast at gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. It's in the blood. It's in the DNA since birth. Talking sports. That's right. And you know that as long as I sit in front of this microphone and camera, I promise that I'll deliver nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. My lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are. The JAYREELZ podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next time on the JAYREELZ podcast, on the flip, baby. And again, Monday podcast pregame coming at you around 9:45. Obviously, the podcast live 11 a.m. Definitely don't want to miss that. And keep it locked on the channel for any of the latest news, breaking news, etc. Not only with sports, but with the channel, etc. As we continue to move it along here in the month of February to March 1st, which will be the 8th anniversary of the podcast. And I will have a live stream on that date. So again, this is why you got to stay locked into the channel for all the latest updates. Until next time, everybody, much appreciate you. Peace, love, and God bless. And until next time, on the flip, baby.